Hello and welcome to Deep Blue Sea, the podcast. I'm your host, Jake Lure. On this show, we talk about films somehow similar to Deep Blue Sea and occasionally Deep Blue Sea, but today we're talking about a film that is aquatic in nature. It's not Rennie Harlan, it's not sharks, it's aquatic. It's Crimson Tide is today's podcast episode. What is Crimson Tide? It's a submarine film. It's a 1995 submarine action thriller directed by Tony Scott, starring the likes of Denzel Washington, Gene Hackman, Viggo Mortensen, James Gandolfini, George DeZunda, Danny Nucci, Steve Zahn, Ryan Phillippe's in there somewhere. A bunch of character actors filling up a submarine cast, as all submarine movie casts seem to do. And basically, this is a military film. There's a nuclear submarine. The captain is Gene Hackman. They get Denzel Washington's his XO. They get an order to launch some missiles. Takes an hour to prep them. And then within that hour, they get another message saying, maybe don't, maybe do, it's unclear. And so tensions rise, and there's mutiny, and then another mutiny, and then a somehow third mutiny. But I have made clear my possible thoughts on submarine movies in the past on this show. So I feel like we should have somebody on who likes them more than I do, generally. So he's one of the people that recommended that I watch Crimson Tide when I made it clear that I don't enjoy submarine films. So welcome back to the show, Movie Rob. Rob, welcome back.
Thank you very much. You know,
So,
if you're wrong, God help us all.
yes, indeed. I was on your podcast, Movie Rob Minute, talking about Die Hard with a Vengeance. You asked me to list my top 5 John McTiernan films, and out of spite, I refused to put The Hunt for October in my top 5 because it's a submarine film and I don't like them. And I think it was on that show that you were like, you should watch Crimson Tide. And then on a separate episode on the USS Indianapolis Men of Honor episode on this show with Aaron Newirth, a similar discussion came about, and Aaron was like, you should watch Crimson Tide. And if you don't enjoy Crimson Tide, you're probably not going to enjoy submarine films. And so that's why we're here today talking about Crimson Tide, crossing it off the list, because I hadn't seen it before. I have now seen it. But before we get into what I thought about it, what is your history with submarine movies, Rob? What do you like about them? Do you like them?
In general, I don't. I'm not really much of a submarine movie fan. There are a few that I've seen that I enjoy. As you and I have discussed in the past, I'm a fan of The Hunt for October. I've seen Run Silent, Run Deep, I think twice or maybe 3 times. I enjoyed it. It was good. And then there's this movie, which I've seen dozens of times. This movie I've seen a lot. And I mean, I think that, I mean, we'll get into the movie itself, but in my opinion, this is one of the, if not the best submarine movie because of the claustrophobia that you feel here.
That's interesting. I feel like of the ones I've seen, this is one of the less claustrophobic ones. Bear in mind, I haven't seen many, but it seems like there's quite a lot of space inside this submarine. There's
No, but when you see everyone moving from place to place, you know, there's always a large group of people trying to get through small spaces. You know, they're moving through it fast. But I think
true.
that also has a lot to do with Tony Scott, and the music here helps also immensely. You know, the pacing of Hans Zimmer's score is just great.
I will take your word for that because I've watched it twice and I can't remember if there was a score. So I'm as is always the case with me. I'm not. It's rarely something that registers with me, and that is my fault more than anybody else's.
Okay.
But I'll take your word for that. So yeah, because I think it's rare to see quite so much of the submarine. There's like shots like down multiple levels of stairwells and lots of boots and legs and feet running up and down these stairwells, which is unusual to see in a submarine movie. I'm sure they do exist. I haven't been on a submarine, at least less, especially not one of this size. But so I was surprised to see like that, and then there's a little montage of Denzel like working out, where he's like jogging around the ship at some points, which again it's the corridors, it's the hallways, and so there's people walking up and down them whilst he's jogging up and down them. But then there's a room dedicated to him like boxing on a heavy bag, which I feel like maybe that wouldn't be necessary to have in a submarine. There'd be an area to exercise, but I feel like a heavy bag is by its very nature taking up a lot of weight. But there we are.
Yes. Well, aren't you weightless in water?
But when you're going down, certainly coming back up again, I feel like it's gonna be detrimental to the whole process. When
Yes,
there are
I would agree with
things
that.
on board a submarine that could probably be used as a punching bag. I'm sure they have like bedding, so they could have like the spare bedding could be bound up in a big bag, and there you go, punch that. That's like make do for the couple of months you're down in the submarine. But whatever. It's a small detail, and apparently Denzel had already gotten into boxing, and he just wanted to have some boxing scenes in the film. So great, why not? Um,
No,
so
it just showed the toughness of his character.
sure.
He's Rocky. He's Rocky. Rocky. 1,600 meters below.
Not quite that deep. We'll get into how deep it is later on, but yeah, it's
Not yet.
quite,
Okay, fine. At that point,
not
it's not.
quite. I know, and at no point is the film was at 1,600 meters below. It gets to
1,600 feet.
it gets
Is it
to
feet?
18. It gets to 1,825 feet is where it taps out.
Feet. Okay, sorry. I just
Yeah.
assumed that they were dealing in meters. I'd forgotten that it was that they dealt in feet.
So that's about
yeah.
556 meters. If they had been
Right,
dealing with
okay.
meters, I would have preferred it a great deal because I do my spreadsheets in meters because that is the superior dimensioning system. But I had to keep
Okay,
converting
it's just
So
dividing by 3. Yeah.
yeah, it's not at all divided by 3. That's not exactly it. If it was yards, it'd be divided by 3, but a meter is slightly longer than a yard. And we are nothing but accurate on this podcast.
Okay, apparently I'm just very inaccurate. So that's
our random guesses of how deep things are at various points in films, which we'll get to later. So where I am coming from this film is I didn't love Crimson Tide. I didn't hate Crimson Tide. That we recently covered the submarine film Below. I preferred Below to Crimson Tide, because I think it is more interesting. My problem with Crimson Tide is I was bored is the wrong word to use. I wasn't engaged, I think. I fell asleep the first time I watched it. I then went back and watched the whole thing again during the day to make sure I wouldn't fall asleep. So I feel like Crimson Tide didn't have anything exceptional in it. It didn't have anything like great to it. It was just kind of everyone felt like everyone was like running at half speed. Maybe like, I didn't see anyone stretching. I didn't see anyone like doing anything in particularly special. I've gone back and listened to 2 other podcasts with people who were fans of this film to try and find out what am I missing. And it's like it's 2 actors. Denzel Washington and Gene Hackman are 2 great actors, and here we see them sparring and going against each other. But I feel like neither one of them is at their best. Neither one of them is putting in anything great. This is kind of middle of the road for a lot of people, for me. But I don't know what I'm missing because I listened to these.
Well, did either of those podcasts help you to get a little bit of an understanding of what people think, or not?
They didn't. I mean, I listened to them both, and every point that was being brought up was like, I don't disagree, but I'm not as impressed as you all are. And, with anything going on there, the one aspect of the film that I like took away from like, yeah, that was really well done was the film gets when the film gets more tense. The submarine kind of pitches at an angle, or it's kind of, I guess it's part of the plot. When the submarine has to go down and has to come up, it's going to be at an angle because it's moving forward and inclining or declining at the same time. But it's like that's used by Tony Scott and by Darius Wolski, the cinematographer, to be like to emphasize how everything's off kilter inside the submarine, not just the submarine itself. And I appreciated that. But outside of that, I was like, okay, this is just kind of a submarine film where as soon as the plot is established, you can kind of see how everything's gonna map out. It's not the kind of film where everyone's gonna die. It's not gonna end in a nuclear war. Yeah. It's clear they're not gonna launch their missiles. Denzel's gonna be proven right. It's all just everything's just kind of plodding along, ticking the boxes, and the film's over. Great. The second watch for this, for me, is the most this podcast has felt like homework. I would say. It's most like
most of this podcast has felt like what?
Homework.
Homework.
Like,
okay.
Yeah, like I gotta do this thing. I got other things I need to be doing. I gotta watch Crimson Tide again. I gotta work out how deep.
Yeah, that's never good. That's never good when you're watching a movie if you feel that way.
which maybe that didn't help
So,
my
so I
opinion of the film.
apologize for that, Jack.
Not at all. I could have quite easily turned around and said, I don't want to talk about this film.
You could have.
So it's on me. It's on me. But I'm gonna try and not be a downer. We like to be positive about films on this show. I'm gonna try and find things I appreciated. I'm gonna mainly talk about things that you appreciated. I feel like. Because this isn't a bad film, but I'm not saying any means it's a bad film. I just don't think it's a great film. I just think it's a film. And when we have Mark on often, he complains about people, rightfully so, saying like, "Oh, it's not Jaws. It's not like the greatest film of all time," and that is a criticism that I hate as well, but also is a criticism I've made before. And like, come aside, it's not Jaws. It's not Deep Blue Sea. It's not as good as some of the submarine films, but it is still a very solid like movie. It's just not what I wanted. It's not the kind of film that I enjoyed. It feels less of an action film that I was expecting, and more of a drama, like a chamber piece drama where they're just like characters in a room, basically, which sometimes can be entertaining. But when you're expecting a Jerry Bruckheimer, Don Simpson, Con Air-esque action movie, it's not what I wanted. I guess.
Okay, I can sort of understand what you're saying about that. I mean, for me, I'm going to add this caveat in here. This movie has an extended cut, which is I think 20 minutes longer. And I always only watch the extended cut, but because you told me that you didn't have access to the extended cut, I was forced to watch the regular cut, which I got to tell you is not as good. It doesn't develop the characters as much, and there's a lot of other scenes that are added in the director's cut that help make things even more tense. And it shows more about the interactions between the various characters and stuff like that. Watching it this time, the regular version of it, I saw this in the theater when it came out, so I saw the regular version then also. But it doesn't feel it's still great in my opinion, but it's even better when you watch the extended version of it. That's what it comes down to. Everyone knows that Tarantino, did a script doctor here because you can tell because they start talking about superhero characters.
Yes.
That's that goes without saying. I don't think.
I want to circle back to the Tarantino stuff in a minute. I want to talk about the extended cut first because I found it interesting. Like when I told you I was going to do a rewatch, you're like the extended cut, and it's not available. I couldn't find it. I've only got what's on Disney Plus here, so that's the regular cut. But I did look into there are sites that list changes between different releases, so I went on that and looked at the differences between the regular and the extended cut, and I found it interesting how hard you were pushing for that, given how seemingly negligible the changes seem like that were listed on this site were. It mentioned like one additional scene between Gene Hackman's character and Dazunda, the chief of the boat, Cobb, as like talking about him about how his weight's become a problem, but they can't do anything because he's been there so long. Like that's the one scene that I picked up on being added. Everything else seems to be like, this sequence is 9 seconds longer with like a couple of more shots of this guy. Like, and it didn't sound like a big difference from what was this on that website. But what is missing, if you can recall from the last time you've seen it? What else?
Yeah. Well, it has been a year and a half since I saw it the last time. The full extended cut. I was tempted to watch both versions now, but I figured that it wouldn't add too much right now to the conversation because I knew I was coming into this, knowing that you're not going to like the movie, because of the comments that you've made to me over the last week and a half about it.
I tried to not allude to anything.
I really did hope. I hoped you'd find it, you'd enjoy it because But that's what they say about movies. That everyone has their own opinions, and that's great. That's why we have what to talk about, and have these discussions.
Sure.
The two scenes that stick out at me that are longer are, again, the one where Ramsey talks to Hunter about Cobb's weight and then tells him to go speak to Cobb. Okay, so there are those two scenes. And then there's also a scene after the ship gets torpedoed. And I guess you can quote unquote say the disaster aspect of that is more, and it shows a little bit more of the damage that was done, which adds to the story from the perspective that, okay, there's more at stake here. Here we do have men who have died because they've just gotten into, they've gotten torpedoed by a Russian, submarine, which adds to the entire plot. Because basically the plot is, as a, you have two commanders that are arguing over the fact, do we follow the orders that we've been given, or do we or because there's a question as to whether there has been a new order given or not, do we question that first order or not? That's what it comes down to. And first of all, I think this movie does an amazing job showing both sides of it, because they, even as the end of the movie states, both of these characters are right and both of them are wrong at the exact same time. There isn't a clear answer throughout the entire movie as to this side is right and this side is wrong. You can jump back and forth saying, oh, well, this makes sense that they're doing it this way, and this makes sense that they're doing it that way, and stuff like that. And the characters even bring it up. There are characters who say, look, I'm you're wrong about this, but you're right about that. That type of thing.
Yeah.
I know that you're not a political person, but it comes down to political perspectives on war, and things like that.
It does. I guess that's an area where I find it frustrating, because I feel like Denzel is pitched as the hero from early on. He's the character we're following, and I am agreeing with him the whole way through. So I found it as though the film was pitching what Denzel was doing is correct, what Gene Hackman is doing is incorrect, and so the debates that they're having, and you can see it from both sides, kind of thing. I feel like that is a fair comment, but the film is almost saying, but Gene Hackman's wrong, and we know this from the start, right? Because he's been pitched as he's not a nice guy. He's been through like 9 XOs in a year. Like, no one can stand working with him. They just kind of they stick with him because he like served combat back in Korea or Vietnam. I can't remember what. But he's being pitched as like this old guy from a different time who like really loves war and is wrong. So like, yes, you could argue for some of the things he's saying, but I feel like the film is positing that Hunter's doing is correct, and we should be not trying to have a nuclear war. And even if this is my like military perspective coming in, I guess. So even if there is an order to launch nuclear missiles and it's proven to be correct, I still think they shouldn't. Like, I still don't think they should. Like,
okay, that again, so, you and I are not in that situation where we need to make that decision, thankfully. Yes. Both ways. But here, I'll even give you a great example towards the beginning of the movie when there's the fire. Okay. Yes. And so Ramsey decides that he's going to do a drill at that point, and Hunter doesn't agree with him on that. Okay. In that situation, do you still agree with Hunter that they shouldn't have done a drill at that point?
I think if you factor in the guy who is in like fighting for his life, who passes away because of it, I think factoring him in, they shouldn't have done the drill. But just because there was a fire, I did approve of that. I did think like, yeah, you should do the drill when there's chaos. That makes sense. But when there's chaos and a guy dying, maybe not.
Okay, but he didn't. But first of all, Ramsey didn't know that at the point, and then when he was told that they're fighting for his life, he stopped it.
That's true.
So from that perspective, yes. Okay.
So knowing everything,
what I was trying to get you, what I was hoping that you would say, and you did say it, is that you do these type of drills when there's chaos. That's the idea. I mean, if you're on a submarine and the submarine is being attacked, and or even let's even go into the Star Trek aspect of it. Okay, you're on the Enterprise. It's a little more it's easier for us to understand. If you're looking at it from that perspective, because many of the people, myself and you, and probably most of the people listening here, can relate more to something happening on the Enterprise than on the USS Alabama, 1,800 feet below the water, right? So you're flying on the Enterprise. The Enterprise gets hit, and I don't know, level 34 gets hit, and there's some damage there or whatever it is. And Kirk decides that, okay, I'm still gonna do a drill because it's a good time. He doesn't necessarily know that someone died, but even if you're in the middle or a drill, or even if you're in the middle of a battle, you continue it at that point, and that's the whole idea of doing a drill at a time when everything is completely crazy, and that's when you want to test people the best.
Absolutely, I agree. And in that instance, I agreed with both of them, with both Hunter and Ramsey, because Hunter, Denzel, knows that this guy is injured, but Ramsey doesn't, as he said. So I agree with Ramsey for doing the drill. I agree with Hunter thinking they shouldn't do the drill. So that is I guess, an encapsulation of the whole film. Like, yeah, these guys have different opinions, and you can see the points of both of them. Great. When you then expand that out to nuclear war, I agree with it less. It's a scale thing.
Okay, fine, I understand that, but the idea here is to show the different levels of chaos and the different levels of decision making that needs to be made, and part of it has to do with the fact is, do you have all the information? And that's basically the argument between the two of them. Denzel's argument is, we don't have all the information because there is another message that possibly will tell us something different. Okay, and Gene Hackman's perspective on it is I'm supposed to follow the last order I got. I didn't get a new order because it didn't get to me.
Yeah, I understand.
So I mean, you can. No, I know you understand it. I'm just explaining the idea of. I'm explaining the idea of how I can still see sanity in the decisions made from both sides.
Yes, I feel like Ramsey's perspective is the military perspective of, you get an order, you do the order. That's just how it is. So he's received an order, he's doing the order,
and that's the way theoretically that's the way it's supposed to work in the military.
Yes, which is why I don't like the military. But
okay, and that's not what that's not the discussion right now.
I'm bringing
Jay likes military or not.
I'm bringing too much extra baggage into this film, and I apologize. So I feel like maybe it's not submarine movies I don't like. Maybe it's like the more militaristic submarine movies. Like Below, it is a military submarine movie, but it's also like, it's less of like the military like ranking of things plays less of a part in it. I think that's more of it's a submarine, it's a haunted house underwater, where like, yeah, it's an army submarine, but they haven't got the captain's not the captain in that film. Spoiler for Below, which you can work out 10 minutes into Below. That's more like, hey, it's everyone's like for themselves and at the same rank pretty much.
Okay, but that's also more of a horror movie than
yeah.
It's not meant as an action thriller drama type of thing that this one is.
Yes,
this is a movie that's meant to make you think.
Okay, yeah, I sure. I don't know if I don't know. I don't know how much I agree with that.
Wait, you don't? Okay, no, because you're looking at it from perspective that I have, my opinion, and that's the way it's going to be. I'm not willing to listen to the other side's opinion and try and see if there's any merit in it.
That's not. I don't think that's fair. I don't think that's fair. I'm willing to listen to the other side's opinion. I'm going to start out not agreeing with it, but I'm always happy to have the discussion.
That's okay. No one is saying that you have to agree with it.
Right. So I'm always happy to have the discussion. We're talking about it right now. So I don't know if I want to ask, what would you do in this situation? Which side are you on, Ramsey or Hunter?
The truth is, I agree with Cobb. Okay. That there are certain aspects of it that you do have to agree with Ramsey on. But once Ramsey went into, said, okay, I'm going to just have someone else concur instead, all right, that you're now breaking the rules. The fact that Ramsey wants to follow the order that he got, I completely agree with. It makes sense. Okay, and Cobb also mentions the fact. Cobb, just for anyone who needs to know, is chief of the boat. right? Well, I don't know where the T is there, but whatever. Chief of boat. they they decided to get rid of the word the. And that's George Zunzo, who I always love him and everything. And I don't know if he is the best actor to have in this in this role in the movie, but he still does a nice job with it.
I think he did a good job. Yeah.
Yeah.
He's not an actor that I'm familiar with, to be honest. I think
You're not familiar with him?
No, I'd heard the name, and but I'm looking at his CV, and I've seen Basic Instincts, but I don't remember him being in it. And I don't
he was
think
his partner
I've seen
in Basic Instincts.
I barely remember. I remember a couple of scenes from Basic Instinct. That's about it. And I've seen the Deer Hunter.
Then you have to rewatch that. Yeah.
I don't know if I do, but I don't think I've seen anything else he's been in. So it's yeah, he's not an actor that I've come across a lot, which is the case for a lot of the cast, to be honest. Outside,
really, you haven't seen most of these people?
I mean,
I love this. I love this cast. This movie's cast is unbelievable. Matt Craven, Viggo Mortensen, James Gandolfini, Rocky Carroll.
Danny
Nucci.
Yeah, so Denzel, Gene Hackman, Viggo Mortensen, Gandolfini, and then you get to Danny Nucci, Steve Zahn, Ryan Philippe. These are actors I've seen before. But Matt Craven,
Rick Schroeder. Have you ever seen Rick Schroeder?
I recognize the name, but I didn't recognize the guy.
He was a star of a TV show in the early '80s called The Silver Spoons, and then he was on NYPD Blue. He replaced, I believe, Jimmy Smith at some point on NYPD Blue.
Yeah,
I don't think he's done anything recently, but I remember when I saw this, I was like, right, okay. I remember I was so happy to see him in this movie because I was like, wow, this child actor is actually in a movie in the future. Yeah.
Yeah, so Rick Schroeder, like Matt Craven is a guy that I like. I don't know if I've seen your face before. I've heard the name, but I don't know. He's just not someone I recognized. Same with Rocky Carroll. Michael Milhone, I recognized as somebody else. I thought it was Daniel Roebuck. But because
really?
they look similar.
No,
they have a similar face.
I don't see similarity. Yeah, they have the Jay Leno jaw. That's what they have. But,
I just saw him and thought, it's Arts from Lost, and it's not. That's Daniel Roebuck.
That's right.
And like this guy, he's in the Lost World Jurassic Park, but I didn't recognize him because he's like uncredited in this more.
Oh, Jay.
I know. I hung my head in shame. So in terms of character actor filled submarine cast, I was not disappointed, but I haven't. These are established actors, but just not in things I've seen. In the same way that I was once on the Lambcast to do a character actor draft, and the then host Dylan, he's like, we're going to rule out some. Like, everyone's have to draft teams of character actors, but like, we'll rule out some of the massive ones. No one's going to pick Steve Buscemi. No one's going to pick like John Turturro. You can't pick J.T. Walsh. I'm like, who the hell is J.T. Walsh? I've never heard of this guy. And I just never seen anything J.T. Walsh had been in.
You've never seen A Few Good Men?
I have now, but at the time,
where Breakdown?
At the time, Breakdown I only watched for the first time like last year. When Mark recommended it a bunch off of Con Air. But yeah, J.T. Walsh was just not someone I'd ever heard of or seen before, and he cuts this line through loads of classic American films. Sling Blade, he's in. He's great in Sling Blade, and as you say, A Few Good Men.
That's right.
And he's just a bunch of Good Morning Vietnam. It's just loads of great films, and I just hadn't seen them at that point, and so this guy was just alien to me. So that is the case with half of this cast, who are, I'm sure, great in their roles. But I'm like, Danny Nucci, great. he's the guy I'm excited about. Fabrizio's in this film, fantastic.
Fabrizio, exactly.
I've seen the films I've seen.
Okay.
So I will be more excited to see a barely credited Steve Zahn than I am George Zunzo.
Okay. All right. And did you recognize Viggo Mortensen here, or are you?
Of course. Yeah. This is like Daylight era Viggo Mortensen. Of course, I'm going to recognize it.
Yes. That's true. It's a good point. That's right. The following year, a year later, I think it was Daylight was in '96, wasn't it?
Yes, it was. Yes, it was 96.
Yeah, right.
So it's hard not to recognize Viggo. He's got
a
distinctive face. They try.
No,
they give him a flat top.
For me, I saw Viggo Mortensen in a lot of movies, But for me, he really only stood out once he, was Aragorn. And then I looked back and I was like, hey, I've seen all these movies that he's been in. That type of thing.
Yeah, I mean,
Similar to what you just said about J.T. Walsh.
is well, if we're talking Rennie Harlin, then Prison, 1987's Prison, with Viggo in it. He's like the lead in that. That's his third film. He's great. Prison. Everyone watch Prison. It's great. Um,
I actually haven't seen that one.
it's entertaining. It's the film Rennie made that got him the Nightmare on Elm Street 4 gig. It's kind of a prequel to that. Not prequel. It has parallels to Nightmare on Elm Street. So it's more of a horror film. And I know you're not necessarily a horror guy, but it's a fun.
Not so much. No.
It's a fun film that's got him. Lane Smith is the bad guy from Lois and Clark. He's like the prison warden with a past. In this odd.
I always think of Lane Smith from My Cousin Vinny.
Yep, that works. Yeah, absolutely. He's great. He's always great. Fantastic. So you mentioned Tarantino infamously did a script punch up on this, resulting in maybe some of my least favorite parts of the film. I don't know. They feel so out of place. I get why they're there. I get like without them, this would be just a real straight drama. But like having the conversation randomly go to like, hey, let's talk about different artists for the Silver Surfer for 2 minutes, and then allegories for I'm Captain Kirk, you're Scotty, fix this radio. That was one of the most crowbarred, awkward, sweaty scenes to me. Like, because the radio's broken, need to get the radio working. I get it. Denzel wants this guy to fix the radio. There's a ticking clock. They got so much time. They've got 20 minutes left to do it, and everyone in the scene knows that. Denzel has made the point. The guy who's fixing the radio understands it. What's his name? Vossler. Lulu Brankett. He's like the guy from The Sopranos who dated Meadow for a little bit. He understands that. They make all that clear, and then Denzel circles back around and goes like, it's like Star Trek. I'm Captain Kirk. You're Scotty. And and they have the whole conversation about it's more warp power. It's like, but you established this. You got it. He knew it. He was working on it. You're now just wasting time.
The funny thing is that the reference doesn't work as well because he should be saying I'm Riker, and you're Geordi. That makes more sense because he's only second in command. He's not in command.
But at that point he was in command because he like assumed command. But yeah, I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
But
whatever. I think that whole reference. I gotta say, I always love pop culture references that Tarantino adds into his movies, even if they sometimes seem completely disjointed and they don't fit. But they try to. My impression of why Tarantino does it is he tries to make things more relevant to the viewer. Okay, and it goes back to my comment that I made earlier about using Star Trek when I use Star Trek as an example. In order for the viewer to get a better understanding of what's going on, during that drill or whatever it is. So I can appreciate these comments. I can appreciate the dialogue, and the way that Tarantino will add those type of things in there. Are they 100% needed? No. Do they make the film a little bit more, a little better? I think so, because they again add. They help someone who has absolutely no idea what's really going on in a submarine to understand what's going on. Now, the Silver Surfer aspect of it, that was just used as a bridge, for. I mean, I don't know enough about Silver Surfer in the comics or anything like that. I don't really care about the Silver Surfer in the comics, but it was to make that first connection between Hunter and Rivetti. That's what it comes down to.
Well, all of
is it Rivetti or?
It's
Rivetti, right?
It's Nucci, yeah, it's Rivetti.
Or Vossler. No, Vossler.
No, it's Rivetti is the that's the Silver Surfer Rivetti. Vossler is the Star Trek. So all of the Tarantino punch-outs were all to like elevate these minor characters and get you on board with this, because the other one is the when Gandolfini and Viggo Mortensen are on the bus talking about the submarine movie.
Oh, I love that scene. That I love.
I feel like it doesn't fit the Gandolfini character. That he's like a movie buff who loves The Enemy Below and Run Silent, Run Deep. It doesn't fit, like, because Gandolfini's character is like the worst guy in the cast, in the crew.
Right.
He's like, he's the guy who at the end is generally disappointed that they're not about to launch the nuclear missiles and start war.
Correct.
So he's the guy I hated him. So the fact that he's the movie buff, he's the no, I love these classic submarine films. I didn't gel with that, but that scene is I didn't catch the guy's name, but that kind of bonds us with the big guy who dies with Steve Zahn later in the film when they're trapped in the bilge area. Which so that like brings I recognize this guy because he's in this scene and he gets yelled at by Gandolfini. I apologize for not knowing the actor's name who plays him or even the character's name. But the big guy when they say that he's not going to fit in the sub.
Right.
So that's the three Tarantino scenes is getting awesome. Right. You recognize this guy. You recognize Danny Nucci. You recognize Vossler. Steve Zahn didn't get one of these, which was frustrating because Steve Zahn has like the. I always get fascinated with deaths in films. He has maybe the best death in the film where he's down there when the bilge pump area is being flooded and he's trying to fix it and he's like got this massive wrench and he's trying to do the thing back up and then the hatch just explodes and takes out his face. Just yes. It may have decapitated him. I don't know. But we never get Steve Zahn. I'm not sure if he has a 2 words of dialogue, 2 lines of dialogue in the film. We see his face a bunch, but we don't ever have a scene of like him connecting with another character through some pop culture dialogue. So which seems unfair. But I appreciated the need for dialogue in these sequences to bond Rivesi with Hunter and to bond Voster with Hunter. So for them to be memorable dialogue scenes, that does make sense. It also just kind of felt jarring. One of the other podcasts I listened to made this point that how unlikely is it that there is one person on this submarine who has this in-depth knowledge of the Silver Surfer, let alone 3. Like they're not widely printed comics; they're from the 60s. But he just happened to have on this crew. There's like 3 people at least who can have such passionate arguments and debates over the various Silver Surfer artists. Whatever, it's Tarantino dialogue. Fine. Yeah, I am kind of glad that I think Tony Scott wanted Tarantino to come back and like punch up more scripts in the future. I'm glad that didn't really happen because obviously they worked on True Romance, but I feel like if Man on Fire had similar little pop culture dialogue scenes, it wouldn't have worked very well.
Right, and the irony is that from what I understand, Tarantino and Scott didn't get along during True Romance because Tarantino he begrudgingly sold the script. He wanted to direct it himself. He wanted to do it his way. I don't know if you've ever seen the Tarantino version of the movie of True Romance.
I have not.
Where
I didn't know
it's done in flashback. The movie starts off with Alabama and Clarence on their way already to LA, and then shows all the stuff beforehand in flashback. And in spoiler, in the Tarantino version, Clarence dies.
Fair enough.
So there's just some minor differences, about the way that he and Tony Scott had a lot of arguments as to how the movie should be. And as much of a Tarantino fan as I am, I do enjoy the Scott version more. I like the linear aspect of it as opposed to the non-linear one.
Yeah, I think I would too. It's been a while. I remember really enjoying True Romance, but it has been a while since I've seen it. So where does Crimson Tide sit in Tony Scott's filmography for you? I'm not going to ask you to rank all 16, 18, whatever many films he has. But is it near the top for you? In the middle?
It's near the top.
Which ones would you place above it? Does that have interest?
I definitely will put True Romance above it.
Sure. Me too.
I will put Top Gun above it.
Okay.
Enemy of the State is also high up there. I'm a
Yeah,
big fan of that one.
I think so. I think I'd agree with that one.
I'm a big fan of Last Boy Scout also.
I don't.
Last
know
Boy
if
Scout
I've
I would put
seen it.
slightly below that. But
I think
yeah, those are the ones that I would have above it. You know, like Beverly Hills Cop 2 is below this.
Sure. Yes. Yeah.
Revenge is far below this. Days of Thunder is horrendously far below this.
I caught some of the other day. I've never seen it, but my wife was watching it the other day. And I was like, well, it was just on in the background. I was like, is this Days of Thunder? Is this character called Cole Trickle? We should probably change the channel. I don't know how I knew that Tom Cruise is called Cole Trickle in Days of Thunder, a film I've never seen. But that's just,
from your Lamprey days, I guess.
It's just information that's stuck in my head that is very useful for everyday life. But yeah, I would agree in putting True Romance and Enemy State above Crimson Tide. I have a bunch of holes in my Tony Scott filmography. He's not my favorite director. Like I've seen, I hate Deja Vu. I think Deja Vu is terrible. I like Unstoppable. Man on Fire is pretty good.
I hate the version of Pig and Pelham 1, 2, 3.
I have never seen it. I've seen the TV version that's got.
I saw the TV version
Richard
once,
Schiff
and I have not been able to. I want to see it again. I haven't been able to find a copy of it.
I was streaming somewhere. I think it was on Prime or something when I watched it. But yeah, it's got like Richard Schiff and Donnie Wahlberg in it. I was like, oh, this is an interesting film. But yeah, these are two versions that don't need to exist when you have the perfect one from the 70s.
That is correct. Yes.
Anyway, let's get back to Crimson Tide. Where were we with Crimson Tide? Are you in agreement that Denzel Washington and Gene Hackman are good in this film? Do you like them as the leads, as the performances?
Yeah, I think they both do a great job. I'm not the biggest Denzel fan, but I like what he does here. And they like I mentioned earlier, I like the debate between these two characters because no one is 100% right and no one's 100% wrong. Forgetting about political views, Jay.
Sure.
just the characters, the way they talk.
Sure, absolutely. And the scene, the kind of when Hunter takes command, the scene of the two of them just yelling at each other, is the real like act off moment. Like, who's going to win this acting off competition here?
And you can believe it though. You don't say to yourself, "Oh my God, I can't believe that these are the two characters that are put up one against the other."
Yeah.
Denzel holds his ground against someone like Hackman, has a lot more experience at the time.
Yeah, apparently that's one of the reasons Denzel worked on the film was because he wanted to work with Gene Hackman, which I get it.
Correct.
I do hear Denzel described as like the greatest living actor of all time, I think that's the name of a podcast. Which I think.
That sounds to me that he's just pandering by saying that.
I think that is the person who hosts that show. He's a comedian. That is their belief, and they love Denzel Washington and think he's the greatest actor of all time. It'll be the same if Mark did a Kurt Russell is the greatest actor of all time podcast, because that's like his favorite.
Right.
Actor.
Okay. Right.
So I think it is a sincere opinion. But I think I'm missing some of his bigger roles. Like, I've never seen Malcolm X. I didn't get very far into Fences when I was like, this isn't a fun one I watched tonight, and I never went back to it. So I'm not saying he's not the greatest
I can hear that. Time. Malcolm X I only saw for the first time just a few years ago, and I really enjoyed it. But I also enjoy history, especially the turbulent 60s of America. So I thought that was really interesting. Fences was okay. It was nice dialogue, but I wasn't superb.
Okay. I can't see myself ever watching Malcolm X just because it is 3.5 hours long, and I don't know if I'll ever have that time. And it doesn't seem to be deep or blue in any sense.
Think of it as a mini series. Watch an hour each time.
But there's so many other things I'd rather watch.
Okay.
Unlike
would you have rather watched Malcolm X than Crimson Tide? Is that what you're saying?
I may have rather watched Malcolm X and Crimson Tide twice. I think
Okay.
like,
Hey, that's your fault. You fell asleep. I can't,
I had to do the Deep Blue analysis for later in the film. I can rarely do that first time around, and this is a particularly frustrating one to do it on, which we'll get to. Yeah, so I think Denzel was good in this. I think Gene Hackman's very good. I've seen them both better elsewhere, which is why I'm thinking like they both just not phoning it in, but just kind of on autopilot a little bit. They've both done this elsewhere. But Hackman seems like a really good fit for this kind of like grizzled. He's the kind of guy that in real life you don't want him shouting at you. So him to play like a shouting character works well.
Yeah.
I prefer these kinds of films where characters have like interesting bits of business to do. Going back to Below, as I keep doing, Holt McCallany has a bunch of business in that film where he's like yo-yoing and eating sardines in tense moments. Not a lot of characters have a lot of like interesting, like, hey, remember when that guy did that thing? Where the Gene Hackman's character has a dog, is his like interesting bit of business. Where
A Jack Russell Terrier.
A Jack Russell named Bear, which comes with him everywhere, including on a submarine, which feels like animal cruelty. Because I get
especially
it.
When he lets the dog just take a piss wherever he wants. That submarine is going to really smell like piss.
Sure. I'm not sure what the other option is other than don't bring a dog on a submarine.
It's probably against regulation. That's what I would think. But
I mean, they do say like they only let him get away with it because it's Ramsey and he's like the old guy at this point and they can't do anything about it. But I just felt very sorry for the dog, who doesn't get to be a dog for however long they're down there. It just has to stay cooped up in this box and urinate against anything. But that's coming from the perspective of a dog owner who just loves nothing more than going out with his dogs. And this is a guy who like, oh, this dog comes with me, regardless of the dog's feelings. I want it here. Anyway.
If you were to go into a submarine for I don't know, for a month, you wouldn't take your dog with you?
Absolutely not. No chance. The dogs would hate
because
it.
your dogs are bigger.
No, I've got a small dog. They're both bigger than the Jack Russell, but my smaller dog isn't that much bigger. But he wouldn't enjoy being in a submarine. No, not at all. This is where like Denzel is proven to be the better guy early on because his family has a dog. And this is a scene I like this scene. When before he's leaving, he's talking with his wife and his kids and his dog, and he says to his son like, "I need you to look after the dog." And son's like, "Why?" And Denzel's like, "Because the dog thinks I'm going to be going forever, and he doesn't understand, so I need you to do it." And the boy's like, "I got it, Dad, I'm on it, no problem." I like that scene. I like that little conversation just because like this is going to be a tough time for the kid as well because the dad's going away, so he's giving him a mission of look after the dog to distract him from the dad going away. Great.
Yeah.
And
do
also,
you think that's a Tarantino ad?
I don't think so. It could be. I mean, it might be, but I don't think it is because they don't talk about how like you need to look after that dog, like Old Yeller or something. There's no like pop culture dialogue in there. It doesn't reference something else.
That's right. He calls the dog Cujo.
Yeah, exactly. And he just it keeps on finding kids down the wells. Listen to it. Go help those kids, Timmy, or whatever. I've never seen Lassie. I don't know. But yeah, so I liked that little character moment. Gandolfini has a few little kind of character bits, but it's mainly he's just like an angry, sneering arsehole. And like that makes him different from the other characters who are just kind of like not in agreement or don't have a lot of backstory or character to them. So that made him stand out, but I didn't. I wanted more interesting details or ticks or just business from other people. It's the Steve McQueening in the background of Great Escape, when anything Steve McQueen does, where he's like always doing something. I feel like some of these characters weren't always doing something. They were just there, which could be the military angle again. They're at attention, they're waiting for an order or whatever, but that's less entertaining.
Well, as you and I have discussed in detail in the past, I mean, Steve McQueen's character Hiltz is not your typical military man.
Absolutely,
he would be one of the guys fighting here, not saying take. He would be Denzel Washington in this movie.
I think so. Yeah, and like more interesting. We kind of been through my notes, I think. Oh, actually, the Hackman scene I did enjoy was when he'd made the decision that they're going to fire the missiles. I think it was that point, and Denzel keeps coming back to him like, "Well, come on," and he keeps on pushing and pushing until Hackman is like, "I've made my order now. Shut the F up!" and just yells at him.
That's right.
Like, that was a nice little explosion of like you can tell he's like Ramsey's been trying to keep it down. We've had this conversation that you don't talk back to me in front of the men, but you're doing it again. I'm going to try and then just explodes in his face. That's a great moment. That's a real like hammy overacting, but it works for the scene. So I liked that, and I like the ticking clock aspect of it. I do enjoy films with a deadline where it takes place almost in real time. Where like at the point where they said they've got 60 minutes until the Russians come up with the missiles, it's about 60 minutes until the end of the film. At that point,
Yeah.
So that's nice. Although I don't know how accurate they'll be in terms of how the depths and the depths that the submarine goes down to and comes back up to during that time. I haven't looked into how possible that is, but that would stretch credulity a little bit, I think, because they go down pretty far and come up pretty far in those times. But maybe it's possible. I'm not saying it's not.
Right.
Yeah, I think we've been through my notes. There's like 3 mutinies in this film, which is more than most. If you wanted more proof that Hackman's supposed to be the bad guy, there's the early sequence when they're talking about Denzel likes horses, and Ramsey is like, apologies, I keep switching between Ramsey, Hackman, Denzel, and Hunter. My brain, it's early. When they're saying he likes horses, and Hackman's like, oh yeah, horses are like teenage girls, there's no brain in their head, but then all the boys want to have sex with them. I was like, pretty sure you're the bad guy here. I think this is early on in the film, but I can tell I'm not supposed to like you. Yeah.
Yeah, the whole conversation about the horses was just really weird.
Yes.
You know, this seems like something that possibly was Tarantino, but it just wasn't. It I don't know, what they call it, Lipizan or something like that, Lipizaner. You know, and their argument between whether it's a black or a white, just also really crazy.
Yeah, they're talking about how it's like a white horse and they're great, these white horses, and Denzel's like, yeah, but when they're young, they start out and they're black. Which feels like that's the only like racially charged moment in the film. There's like not subtext, and I don't know.
Correct.
I don't know if I like that because I mean initially I feel like this film works outside of the characters being different races up until that point. Because early casting, I think Tom Cruise was up for the Denzel part at some point, and so it was clear like early on, race not a part of it. I don't know if like Tarantino is known for adding racial stuff to his dialogue. Something that when he was brought onto this, Denzel bristled against him a lot because he likes to put the N word in his scripts, whether it's like mostly unnecessarily, and occasionally he likes to say it in his films, very unnecessarily. And so they're having this conversation about whether resources are white or black, and whether they're from Spain or Portugal, when they're actually from Austria. So they're both wrong.
Exactly. I also heard that Brad Pitt was considered to play Hunter. I don't think either. I don't think he, as much of a non-fan of Denzel Washington as I am. I don't think that Brad Pitt or Tom Cruise would have been better in this role.
It would have been different. I'm trying to think. 95 Brad Pitt. So that's just after True Romance, isn't it?
Yeah, True Romance is 93, and that was just druggy Brad Pitt.
Yeah, but that's he's capable of different things. But like Interview with the Vampire.
No, but 95 is
7, 12 Monkeys.
No.
Yeah, 95 is 7 and 12 Monkeys.
12 Monkeys, right? That's the one I was thinking. Yeah. Right, you just mentioned. Right, 12 Monkeys.
So I'm just listing numbers at you, 7, 12.
Yeah. I don't think either of them would have been as good in this.
They'd be different. I think of those three, I think Denzel is the best choice for this role. But I think they both would have been.
Right.
But yeah, so I don't like enjoy the racial aspect being brought into it at the end. I mean, I've heard other people say like, and you can tell like he's really disappointed at the who was it, when is it Rocky Carroll, who is the other like black high up member of the crew, when he's one of the people that,
Yeah.
like kind of mutinies against Hunter's character. That was what really hurts Denzel, because they're both black. It's like, no, it's made very clear in the film that they know each other and then he's friends. They've served together
Yeah.
before, just like he served with Viggo Mortensen before, so he's disappointed because these guys are his friends. So yeah. Um, cool. I
Did you
think
see some of the people that were supposed to play Ramsey?
I can't remember. Please enlighten me.
Warren Beatty, Al Pacino,
Yeah, I heard Al
John
Pacino.
Voight,
Yes. Jo-
Tommy Lee
Okay.
Jones.
Okay. Yeah. Tommy Lee Jones, I think, would work very well. Um,
Yeah,
John.
again, I still think that Hackman is the best of those choices to play this role.
I agree. I mean, Tommy Lee Jones. Yeah, this is around the same time as Under Siege. So maybe he wanted to do that boat film instead of
No,
this
Under
boat film.
Siege. Under Siege was '92,
It's about the
so this
same.
is three years later.
Yeah,
No,
about the
it's
same.
okay, fine. Fine. See, for me,
So
3 years is a very long time. You know,
sure. Um, so maybe Tony Jones was like, I've done a boat film. I don't need to do another boat film.
maybe.
I've done that. I've had my throat ripped out in one film. Sure. Knife fight with a leather jacket on. We've done Under Siege. That's a great film. I enjoyed that more than Crimson Tide. Um, and I did enjoy like the famous photo I know of Tony Scott, just because it's the one that's on his Wikipedia, is him wearing the red hat when he directs. And so I did enjoy that Gene Hackman is dressed as him in this, and that he's wearing a red hat. I don't know which
Yeah.
one's dressed as the other. That's all I could. Every time I was seeing Gene Hackman in this like battered old red hat, I was like, oh, he's dressed as Tony Scott. It's like how the star of Christopher Nolan films is always dressed as Christopher Nolan. It's now also the case with Crimson Tide. So good. But yeah, that's
Yeah.
all I had for Crimson Tide. Did you have anything else you wanted to talk about? Any other thing about the film?
No, no. I just want to once again apologize for making you watch something twice that you didn't completely enjoy. I actually was hoping that you would enjoy it more, but oh well, I was wrong.
I was hoping that as
I'm
well.
willing to admit that.
Well, I mean, I mean, you can recommend something that you like, and I tried it. I gave it a go. Like Aaron said, watch Crimson Tide. If you don't like Crimson Tide, you can probably not watch any other submarine films. So great. We don't have to ever do an episode on K-19 the Widowmaker. It's never gonna happen.
Right.
Listeners
Okay.
listeners out there demanding K-19 the Widowmaker episodes. Sorry, keep looking. Are there any other submarine films that you would recommend? You said you liked Run Silent, Run Deep.
Yes. You know, and in
Uh,
the movie they get it wrong because they said it was with who did he say that it was with?
Kurt Jurgens.
He said it was Cary Grant, and it was actually it's Clark Gable.
Sure. I didn't know if that was right or not at the time. Should I
Yeah,
watch? Should we do a Run Silent, Run Deep
Gable and
episode
Burt
sometime?
Lancaster.
Do you think I'd
Maybe.
like Run Silent, Run Deep?
Jay, at this point, I think I will go with what Aaron told you that you know, if you don't like Crimson Tide, you're probably not going to like any other submarine movies, because that's
Okay.
also a similar type of thing where you have you know, the XO and the captain you know, arguing as to what they're supposed to do.
Fair enough.
So I think if we were to do that episode, it would just be a rehash of this one, where I tell you it's a great movie and you're like, well, you know, it was okay.
Okay. Okay. Noted. I mean, I'm trying to think if if I should look out for like more non-military submarine films, there's few because submarines are very typically military vehicles.
Yeah, like I was not a fan of U-571.
I didn't see it. Yeah.
I wouldn't recommend it.
Okay, because there's one that had Jude Law in it, where they take a submarine to go like treasure hunting. I can't remember what it's called. Black Sea. I have seen Black Sea. But I feel like that would be one I'd be okay for watching again because it's not like a military film. It's just these guys going on on a treasure hunting mission underwater, and it's kind of horror thriller. So maybe we'll do a Black Sea episode at some point.
No, you know what? I've actually never seen that one.
And that's got a fun cast like Jude Law, Ben Mendelsohn, Scoot McNairy, Michael Smiley's
Yeah.
in that. I love Michael Smiley, Jodie Whittaker. So yeah, maybe I'll do Black Sea at some point. I do like that submarine films all have colours in the title, just as a rule, it seems. Crimson Tide, Red October, Black Sea. There we are.
Well,
Good.
you do understand the reference for Crimson Tide, don't you?
I'm guessing it's the Russians.
No, it's the USS Alabama, and the Alabama football team is known as the Crimson Tide.
I would never have known that. There is not a single way I could have possibly known that.
I think it's mentioned in the movie at some point.
Well, I
Maybe
mean,
maybe just an extended version.
maybe. Or maybe it's mentioned in a way where it's clear what they're talking about if you know that, but if you don't, it's like a passing reference that's difficult to. Either way, that
Right.
doesn't. So that is irritating. It's called Crimson Tide because the ship's called the Alabama. So which came first? Or did they call the film Crimson Tide and then call the boat the Alabama? Or did they call the boat Alabama? Oh, we can call this Crimson Tide. And also Russians, they're red, crimson, haha. That is, I don't like that. I like it less now. Yeah, I wish you hadn't told me. Good.
You like the movie less, or you like the idea of that?
The movie. I like the movie less. No, it's called Crimson Tide
Oh, well.
because of that. Yeah.
Well, it's good that we didn't rank it yet. It
Sure.
gives you a chance to rank it lower because of that.
I gave it a 2.5 on Letterboxd.
Okay.
Yeah, which.
All right. One other thing I wanted to mention is I love the cameo by Jason Robards.
Yes, Jason Robards always good to see him crop up in a film, and I was seething a little bit when he's like, "We're not gonna let you talk, Denzel Washington. I've worked with Gene Hackman for years. If he's lying, first I'm hearing of it. Like, I hate you so much. I mean, I can tell it's the kind of film where everything's gonna be okay in the end, but still, just coming from that perspective, I hate you. I hate you. Yeah, a nice little cameo at the end.
Right. And if I remember correctly, in the extended version, that scene is slightly longer also, but it doesn't change the outcome. The outcome is the same.
I would hope so.
Yes.
Let's cut out a bit. And despite all of that, you are condemned to death. Is what's cut out from the extended version.
That's right. We're going to make you walk the plank.
Okay, so two features I have to do. How is Crimson Tide similar to Deep Blue Sea? There's a birthday party in it, in which someone's using a camera. There's a scene with heavy rain. Actually, when Gene Hackman's trying to, he's doing his big motivational pre-sailing.
His patent speech.
His patent speech. I think it's hard to look cool and impressive when it's raining quite that much. It looks better. It's like more visually engaging, I guess. But I just feel like he looked a bit sad in the rain.
Well, you should like the fact that they actually used an umbrella to keep the dog dry.
I'm glad, yes. But
no, that's what I'm saying.
It's a Jack Russell, so their fur dries pretty quick. My dogs are Labradoodles. When they get wet, and they stay wet. So he didn't need an umbrella. But I'm glad that he had one. Most of the film takes place at sea. There is an underwater pet. It's not a bird, it's a dog. There is smoking in an underwater facility that seems unwise. So much smoking in a submarine. Before they go down, they're having their cigar up on the deck, and Hackman's like, my last breath of polluted air for the next month. I hate air I don't trust air I can't see. I'm gonna be stuck down in all this filter stuff. And then he's smoking a cigar in every scene. And Viggo Mortensen's he's going through cigar after cigar. Everyone's smoking all the time in a submarine. What are they doing? I don't care. It's ridiculous. There's an underwater fish tank. Ryan Philippe has a fish tank in his bunk. It's in the same way that Janice has a fish tank in her room. There's a fire in the kitchen and galley area. There's an important necklace with a key around it. There's a problematic winch, which is that winch caused so many problems in this film because it made a loud noise. They had to cut the thing. If they hadn't had to cut the cable, Jim would still be alive. Anyway, there's an underwater explosion. Rooms are flooding. There's rooms lit entirely with red, green, and blue lights, like in Deep Blue Sea 2. And there's a Sopranos cast member with James Gandolfini or Ida Todoro. Good. And finally, how deep and how blue, and because this is season 6 of this podcast, how sea is this film? A new way of ranking these films has emerged. So, Rob, as I'm sure you're aware, Deep Blue Sea is on average 14.5 meters or 47.5 feet deep and about 31% blue. I don't know how sea Deep Blue Sea is at this point, but we haven't worked that out yet. Do you think, on average, the action in Crimson Tide takes place deeper? What's on screen is bluer, and is it set more at sea than Deep Blue Sea?
Okay, so first of all, it is definitely deeper.
Okay.
As we established my lack of knowledge between feet, meters, and yards. When you talk about is it blue, does that mean things that are actually happening underwater, or that we know that this is happening underwater?
It is what is on screen is the color of what is on screen blue. That is all we're looking at. So
it's less. So therefore, it is less than Deep Blue Sea.
Okay.
And define tell me the definition again of sea.
So how much of the action or what percentage of the film takes place at sea? So like in the ocean.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, so I would say that this is more than Deep Blue Sea.
Okay. I don't actually know how sea Deep Blue Sea is at this point because that's what we're doing at the moment. But depth-wise, yes, this is deeper than Deep Blue Sea because this is on average about 141.5 meters or 464.5 feet deep. This was frustrating to work out because every time they kept cutting back to the depth, saying, "Oh, we're just passing 1,200 feet deep." It's like at that point you're 1,200 feet deep, but the way that I work it out is in like blocks of time. So I had to work out the average depth between that point and the previous time you had said what depth they were at. So that's how deep they were on average during that block of time. Then that's in feet, and so you can convert to meters. And they did that like 20 times. So that was frustrating.
It's a good thing you know math.
I mean, I can use Google where it has conversions.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's considerably deeper. It is our 11th deepest film. It is slightly deeper. Sorry, it's deeper than Empire of the Sharks, less deep than the remake of The Little Mermaid. Good. Blueness, you're right. It is less blue than Deep Blue Sea. It is about 0.2% blue. There's a lot of shots of just a submarine outside of the outside of the submarine, going down, going up. So that's entirely blue in those shots, and a lot of people wearing like blue uniforms on board. And there's some areas that are lit entirely blue. So that means it's bluer than Santa Jaws, less blue than Below, the other submarine film we've done. Hooray! And this is about 78.4% of the action takes place at sea in Crimson Tide. As I've said, I don't know what that compares to Deep Blue Sea, but I think that's going to be less sea than Deep Blue Sea, just because like Deep Blue Sea, once they're at Aquatica, it's entirely there. But we will see. We'll see in the future when I've worked out how sea Deep Blue Sea is. Good. A whole new graph is coming, everyone. A whole new graph.
Good. Very cool. Very cool. Always love seeing this.
Thank you for joining me to talk about Crimson Tide. I apologize I didn't enjoy it more. Rob, what would you like to plug?
I have a podcast, which is known as Movie or Minute, a Movies by Minute podcast, which is known as Movie or Minute. We are currently in the middle, towards the end of season 7, which is Die Hard with a Vengeance. Having a lot of fun with that one. Previous seasons, for anyone who doesn't know, first season was Great Escape. Second was Plane, Trains, and Automobiles. Third was Die Hard. Fourth was When Harry Met Sally. Fifth was Die Hard 2. Sixth was It's a Wonderful Life. And now we are in the middle of Die Hard with a Vengeance. And come October, we will start season 8, which I won't reveal to anybody what it is yet. But when Jay says he doesn't, when Jay says he doesn't like war movies,
I didn't say I like
what
war.
Jay thinks about that.
Okay, we'll talk about. I'm looking forward to talking about that on that episode because I feel like that is a war movie, but it's less about the chain of command, which is the part that irks me about the military. I think.
It depends how much you gripe, if you gripe up or down.
Exactly. Yes.
Uh,
That
we'll
I
have to
mean,
wait and see about
in
that.
some films, some war films are more FUBAR than others, I think.
Yes,
I mean, I
yes,
just
that is
finished
true.
watching Masters of the Air yesterday. Finally, I think I should finish watching it because you keep telling me to watch it. And I used to like war films more than I do now, war products more than I do now. I don't know if it's just because I've gotten older and can appreciate this is actual real loss of life that we're seeing on screen. These are like, especially in Masters of the Air, Band of Brothers, etc. These are like real people that went through real things, and we should respect that more. Whereas the film that we're covering, that I feel like people can probably guess at this point from the references we've dropped, that is something I watched a lot growing up and really appreciated, and I enjoyed the numerous character actors that crop up in that, and I don't know, we'll talk about it. But I
Yeah.
don't dislike war films, but I find I like them less and less as I get older.
Okay.
I think.
Understandable.
Anyway,
Okay.
so I think this
And
is coming out.
on
Sorry.
my and on my
Yeah.
regular website where I have movie reviews, I just passed my 11,500th review. On my way to the next milestone.
There we go.
So you can find me. My website there is movierob.wordpress.com, and my podcast you can find on any podcatcher that you are listening to this on. Just look for Movie Rob Minute, or you can go to my website movierobminute.com.
Well, every few months or so, I'll share an episode that I'm on, whenever that crops up on our social media.
Five
So
episodes.
great.
5 episodes.
Yes, exactly. 6. It is 6 in a
Yes,
row. So,
that's true.
so I'm not sure exactly the schedule, but I think next week's episode is going to be on the Rainy Harlem film Devil's Pass, or the Dyatlov Pass incident, depending on where you are, which I'm recording in 2.5 hours. It's a really busy weekend for me, podcasting wise, but that's fine. If that came out last week, the next week will probably be an episode on Deep Blue Sea again, because that's what we like to do on this show. But listeners, you can find everything I do over at lifeversusfilm.com, which is not a lot. You can find everything Mark does over at moviesfilmsandflicks.com, which is far more than I do. And you can follow this podcast on all sorts of social media at Deep Blue Sea Pod. Drop us an email at deepblueseapod@gmail.com if you have any submarine film recommendations that you think I would enjoy more than Crimson Tide. Don't suggest Down Periscope. I hear it's terrible. But
It was.
but no, in a way that I'm still interested to maybe watch it. We'll see. But that will do it for this show, for Crimson Tide. Thank you once again to my guest, Movie Rob.
Thank you very much.
I've been Jay Clue, and I'll Deep Blue. See you next week.